If you are older than 60 years of age, this is something that I want you to hear clearly. Seemingly innocuous actions that you do on a daily basis could be driving your prostate to grow larger than it should be. This issue goes beyond simply getting up at night to use the restroom. Your freedom, your dignity, and your health in the long term are all factors in this. It is a common occurrence for men to come to me saying, "Doctor, I thought this was just normal aging." However, it is not the case. The reality is that a lot of the activities that you do on a daily basis are causing your prostate harm without you even realizing it. You will face harsh repercussions if you do not cease and desist. My name is Dr. Moit Kara. I specialize on urology and men's health. For more than 30 years, I have committed my life to assisting men in protecting their vitality, their confidence, and their most personal health. I have faced thousands of men, fathers, husbands, grandfathers, who suffer in silence because nobody has gave them the information that I am about to divulge to you. This is where the paradox lies. The majority of men think that prostate enlargement is just an inevitable part of aging that occurs regardless of the circumstances. However, I have witnessed the complete opposite. I have witnessed men in their 70s who had healthy prostates and robust bladders, as well as men in their 50s who are in excruciating pain. The difference frequently boils down to daily routines that nobody ever warned them would occur. In this video, I am going to explain the 13 unsightly habits that quietly drive prostate growth and show you exactly how to stop them before they take more of your life. I promise you this. These are straightforward improvements, but they could result in the ability to sleep through the night again, the ability to restore intimacy, and the ability to avoid harmful procedures. I would like you to stick around until the very end, though, because the final habit I will talk about is the most damaging one of them. It is the one that almost every man over the age of 60 is guilty of, and the one that increases prostate growth more than most people are aware of. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell before we begin. That way, you will not miss any of my upcoming recommendations about men's health after the age of 60. I would be very grateful if you could provide me with your feedback. If you find this video to be of assistance, please leave a remark and write 1. If you believe that there is room for me to improve, type 0 and let me know what you would want to see next. We should now go on to the first thing that people do without realizing it. It is something that virtually every man over the age of 60 does without even giving it a second thought, yet it produces a steady pressure on the prostate that is so quiet that it goes unnoticed. It is possible that your gland continues to grow in size due to just one tiny activity. One habit is sitting for an extended period of time without moving about. Staying seated for an extended period of time without moving is the first habit. This is a problem that I encounter in many of my patients. Following retirement, life moves at a more leisurely pace, and men frequently discover that they find themselves spending hours in the recliner, watching television, reading the newspaper, or scrolling through their phones. It even seems peaceful. It certainly doesn't feel harmful. However, what most men fail to recognize is that this quiet behavior is causing their prostates harm without them even realizing it. When you sit for long periods of time, the weight of your body applies direct pressure to the region of your pelvis. Circulation to the prostate is reduced, and over time, this stagnant pressure contributes to the development of inflammation. This occurs as a result of a decrease in the speed of blood flow. An irritated prostate does not remain silent. It expands, it inflates, and it starts to disrupt your sleep, your ability to urinate, and even your feelings as a man. I remember one patient in particular, a retired truck driver, who informed me that he would sit down for about 12 hours a day. He believed that the frequent trips he took to the restroom at night were just a consequence of his advancing age. However, we came to the realization that his extended hours of sitting were a significant contributing factor to the condition once we took a closer look. The transformation was striking once he started getting up to walk around every half hour, going for brief walks, and even performing simple stretches near his chair. In the span of a few weeks, His urine flow improved, the burning feeling subsided, and he was able to sleep through the night for the first time in years. "Doctor," he continued after looking at me, "I never would have believed that something as simple as this could make such a significant impact. That is the strength that comes from breaking this habit. Do not disregard it if you see yourself in this narrative. It is important to pay attention to the messages that your prostate is delivering. Stand up, move about, and provide your body with the circulation that it requires urgently." And as far as circulation is concerned, the second habit on this list may surprise you even more, because it has nothing to do with sitting and everything to do with what you are keeping inside. Habit 2 is to finish what you start. The second habit is to disregard any cravings to urinate during the night. I am well aware of how enticing it might be to turn over in your bed, pull the covers up tight, and convince yourself that you can wait till morning to do it. A lot of my patients confess that they do this on a near-daily basis due to the fact that they do not want to have to fumble around in the dark to go to the restroom or risk waking up their spouse. It may seem like a minor action of comfort, but the effects on your body are far but harmless. When pee is held in, the bladder is stretched in a manner similar to that of a balloon, and the prostate is forced to work harder against pressure that it was never designed to withstand. Over an extended period of time, this continuous strain has the potential to cause irritation in the prostate, exacerbate inflammation, and speed up the very enlargement that is the underlying reason for your frequent trips to the bathroom. One man I treated, a retired veteran, admitted that he would regularly disregard the impulse to urinate during the night. He believed that he was demonstrating his toughness by sparing himself the inconvenience of getting out of bed. However, when he came to visit me, he was waking up 6 or 7 times a night, weary and frustrated. His prostate was bloated, his bladder was overworked, and his quality of life had deteriorated significantly. I communicated to him the unadorned truth. He was training his bladder to battle against itself every time he chose to disregard the signals that his body was sending him. After he began to pay attention and get up whenever his body needed him to, he became aware of something remarkable. The urgency started to subside, the agony subsided, and he gradually began to get some sleep at night again. Later on, he informed me, "Doctor, that I wish I had been informed years ago that the consequences of holding it in were causing me more harm than good. Therefore, if disregarding those cravings that you have at night is something that you do on a regular basis, I strongly encourage you to avoid doing that. Your body is more intelligent than you believe it to be, and every time you go to the bathroom, you are performing a small act of self-care that protects your prostate. It may come as a surprise to you, but the next habit that we are about to reveal is not related to what you do at night. It is related to the things that you put on your plate during the day, and it may be quietly fueling the fire that is inside your prostate. Get to bed early and wake up early. Consuming an excessive amount of red meat and processed foods is the third habit. There is nothing that can compare to the pleasure of a greasy burger from a fast food restaurant, a dish of bacon, or a succulent steak, particularly when it has been a staple of your diet for many years. A lot of men tell me, "Doctor, I've been eating this way my whole life and I feel fine." However, what you cannot see is the gradual, concealed harm that is occurring within your body. A continuous state of inflammation is caused by processed foods that are loaded with chemicals and preservatives, as well as heavy, fatty cuts of meat. Inflammation is comparable to adding gasoline to the fire in terms of the growth of the prostate. Your prostate has to work harder with each greasy meal, and over time, this can cause it to expand until symptoms become apparent. Frequent urine, a poor flow, and even pain that interferes with your normal activities. I had treated a patient who was a retired steel worker. He had a particular fondness for both hamburgers and sausage. He stated that it was the way in which he was raised and that it was a part of his culture, and as a result, he never gave it any attention. When he arrived to see me, his prostate had become so swollen that he was unable to sit through a single movie without having to make a trip to the lavatory 3 or 4 times. After we made a modification to his diet, introducing skinnier proteins such as fish and poultry, increasing the amount of vegetables he consumed, and yes, even adding tomatoes that are loaded with lycopene, his life started to transform. He continued to take pleasure in food, but it was no longer a source of suffering for him. He was able to get a better night's sleep, his energy came back, and for the first time in years, he felt like he was himself again. He informed me, doctor, that I had never been aware that food might be medicine or poison, depending on the choice I made. If you see that you are relying too much on processed foods and red meat, take a step back and think about the effects that they have on your prostate. Making choices that are healthier and cleaner is not a matter of foregoing enjoyment. It is related to developing autonomy, energy, and control over your body. Consider what happens when you take away from your body something even more fundamental, such as water, which is something as simple as that if you think that diet can cause this much damage. That is the next habit we need to discuss, and it is possible that you are more guilty of it than you realize. The fourth habit: inadequate water intake and dehydration. Dehydration and insufficient water consumption are the topics of the fourth habit. I can see why so many guys over the age of 60 reduce their water intake. Particularly throughout the night, you do not want to be constantly running to use the restroom. Drinking less and urinating less seem to be the sensible options in this situation. However, this is the truth. Your prostate and bladder suffer more greatly when you consume less water. When your urine is highly concentrated, the prostate receives additional pressure, and the lining of the bladder gets irritated. That discomfort causes inflammation, and inflammation causes the glands to expand, initiating the very cycle that you were attempting to avoid in the first place. You are really compromising your well-being when you do things that give you the impression that you are in command. There was a patient of mine who was happy to inform me that he regulated his water intake to only 2 glasses each day. He believed that he was able to trick his bladder into behaving. However, his prostate was enlarged, and his urine tests revealed irritation, and his face appeared exhausted when he was sitting in my office. After discussing the importance of staying hydrated, he finally gave in and decided to gradually increase the amount of water he drinks. First thing in the morning, during the afternoon, and then in the evening, only an additional glass is required. The change that had taken place was unmistakable. His burning sensation subsided, he no longer had to get out of bed every hour during the night, and the flow of his urine became more regular. After a few weeks had passed, he gave me a call and remarked, "Doctor, I never knew water could make me feel this young again." Providing your body with the things it genuinely needs is a source of straightforward power. If you're in the habit of limiting your water intake in order to avoid going to the bathroom, I would like you to reconsider that habit. Instead of consuming a lot all at once, try sipping on modest quantities of fluids throughout the day, and refrain from drinking large glasses close to bedtime. Your evenings will become better, your prostate will settle down, and your bladder will be grateful to you. Furthermore, the next habit that we must confront is one that many men rely on extensively, which is just as startling as the fact that we are dehydrated. It's a thing that feels like it's going to relieve stress in the moment, but it's actually causing more damage to your prostate than you could have ever thought. Habit 5 is to seek first to understand and then to be understood. Drinking excessive amounts of alcohol. For many guys, having a drink in the evening is a reward that they have worked hard to achieve, a way to unwind after a long day, or a means to spend time with friends. It is possible to believe that drinking a glass of whiskey, a cool beer, or a pour of wine is harmless, or perhaps beneficial to your health, if you have heard the assertions that are made regarding red wine and the heart. However, the reality is that your prostate is in a totally different situation. The body becomes dehydrated as a result of alcohol consumption, the bladder becomes irritated, and the sensitive hormonal balance that maintains the stability of the prostate is disrupted. Those drinks that you consume thinking that they would help you unwind may instead be causing irritation and enlargement, making every trip to the bathroom more painful than the last. There is one patient in particular that comes to me. He was a retired teacher who told me that he never failed to drink his bourbon every night. The warmth, routine, and the feeling of security that it provided were things that he adored. However, he eventually discovered that he was unable to get through a single night without waking up time and time again, coping with urgency and irritation. Upon examination, we discovered that his prostate was greatly enlarged, and the alcohol was a key factor in the discomfort. We put forth effort to reduce our workload together. During the week, he would sip herbal tea instead of his usual bourbon at night. On weekends, he would limit himself to just one drink. In just a matter of a few months, his symptoms underwent a significant improvement. He slept for a longer period of time, felt more energetic, and informed me that he finally understood how alcohol had been robbing his health behind the scenes. Therefore, if you have developed the habit of preparing an additional alcoholic beverage, I invite you to consider the hidden cost that comes with this practice. Moderation can make all the difference. When you replace alcohol with water, tea, or even pomegranate juice, you give your prostate the much-needed relaxation it has been craving. If you believe that alcohol is the only component of your lifestyle that is negatively impacting your health, wait until you hear about the next habit. This is because the consequences of your body completely ceasing to move are considerably more devastating than anything that could ever occur from you raising a glass. Habit 6 is to synergize. The sixth habit that is lacking is physical exercise. I am aware of the fact that as time goes on, the body does not always cooperate in the way that it used to. The thought of putting on your athletic shoes to go for a stroll or a workout can feel more like a burden than a blessing, particularly when your energy level is low and your joints are sore. Many men over the age of 60 convince themselves that it is normal to slow down and that the reward for a lifetime of hard work is to sit back and relax. However, what is sometimes overlooked is the extent to which the prostate is harmed by that stillness. If you remain inactive, your circulation diminishes, your metabolism slows down, and fat in your abdomen begins to accumulate. Moreover, belly fat is not only a matter of carrying around additional weight, it also produces estrogen, a hormone that promotes the growth of the prostate and deprives your body of the balance it so urgently requires. I recall a retired accountant who told me that he spent the most of his days lounging in his favorite armchair watching television for hours on end. He reported experiencing a feeble flow, persistent desires, and tiredness that appeared to follow him about like a shadow. We began with something straightforward: 15 minutes of walking around his neighborhood every day. There are no drastic measures, gym memberships, or anything of that sort, simply consistent progress. He said that he was sleeping better, had more energy, and even noticed that his excursions to the bathroom were less frequent and less urgent within a few weeks. After several months, he returned to me with a smile on his face and said, "Doctor, I never would have believed that moving this little would give me so much in return." That is the calm power of physical activity, which serves as medicine rather than as a form of punishment. Therefore, if you encourage yourself to begin modestly, I strongly suggest that you break free from any sedentary habits that you may have developed. Even simple activities such as mild walking, modest stretching, or gardening might have a greater impact on your health than you might think. Your entire body is grateful to you for providing movement, which your prostate flourishes on. While a lack of exercise weakens the body, the next habit we'll cover goes beyond just zapping your energy. It not only disrupts your sleep directly, but it also saturates your prostate with stress in ways that you may have never suspected before. The seventh habit is to keep a positive outlook. The seventh factor that contributes to poor sleep hygiene is a combination of high stress levels and bad sleep habits. This is something that a lot of men brush off as being an inescapable aspect of life. Bills accumulate, worries about one's health increase, responsibilities to one's family persist, and the thoughts in the head never truly find a moment of reprieve. However, this is the truth. Harmless things do not include stress or a lack of sleep. They are among the strongest stimulators for the expansion of the prostate gland. The body releases cortisol, often known as the stress hormone, when an individual is in a situation where they are constantly under pressure. This gradually disrupts the balance of all of your hormones, resulting in a decrease in testosterone and an increase in inflammation. When you combine that with nights of disrupted sleep, you create the ideal conditions for your prostate to get enlarged and for your bladder to become weaker. Frequently, what feels like the natural process of growing older is actually the body crying out for rest that it never receives. At one point in my life, I worked with a man who had spent his entire career running a business. He was always busy and constantly stressed out. Even after he retired, he continued to carry that stress with him into his nights. He would lie awake, his body would be restless, and his mind would race. He mentioned that he always felt an intense need to urinate and that he never made it through the night without making numerous trips to the restroom. His life started to change when we concentrated on decreasing his stress levels by practicing breathing techniques, going on walks in the evening, and even establishing a simple routine of reading a book that was peaceful before going to bed. Without taking any breaks, he began to get 6 hours of sleep, then progressed to 7 hours. His prostate problems subsided, he regained his vitality, and for the first time in many years, he informed me that he felt a sense of serenity within himself. "Doctor, I never realized my mind was punishing my body," he replied after looking at me. "Therefore, if you find yourself stuck in a cycle of tension and sleepless nights, you should realize that it is not something that you are doomed to experience. Taking baby steps toward a sense of calm and a regular routine can provide your prostate with protection in ways that no pharmaceutical ever could. While stress is silently depriving you of the rest that you need, the following behavior is much more hazardous because it is depriving you of consciousness. The cost of that error can be significantly greater than you would ever anticipate since too many men leave it out entirely." Habit 8. Maintain a positive and proactive attitude toward life. The 8th habit mentioned is putting off going in for routine exams. I am aware of how simple it is to steer clear of the doctor's office. There are a lot of males who say to me that they feel well, so why should I schedule an appointment with them? They do not want to deal with the inconvenience. They do not want to do the tests. And sometimes they simply do not want to be informed of anything negative. The prostate, however, is a difficult organ. It frequently develops quietly without any noticeable signs until the condition has reached an advanced stage. When the symptoms of urgency, weak stream, or painful retention finally manifest, the gland can already have reached a size that is extremely hazardous. If you ignore routine checkups, it is comparable to driving a vehicle with the check engine light illuminated and acting as if everything is all right. You may be able to squeeze a few more miles out of it, but a breakdown is inevitable. This will end up costing you significantly more than a single visit ever would. I will never forget one patient, a strong, confident man in his early 60s, who told me that he hadn't visited a doctor in almost 2 decades. He had reached the point where he was no longer able to urinate at all by the time that he came to see me, and we had no choice but to rush him into emergency treatment. That crisis could have been prevented if regular exams had been performed. When I later questioned him why he had waited such a long time, his response shattered my heart. He said, "Doctor, I believed that if I pretended it wasn't there, it would go away on its own." He had to sacrifice his comfort, independence, and several months of recuperation as a result of his belief. Getting regular checkups is not an indication of weakness. Rather, it is an indication of strength. The courage to face the truth and do something about it before it is too late. Therefore, if you have been putting off your visit, let this serve as a wake-up call for you. You might save agony, embarrassment, and perhaps save your life by making a single appointment per year. The bravery that you demonstrate today will be much appreciated by the person you will become in the future. While the failure to have medical exams leaves you unaware of risks that may be lurking, the next habit that we are about to bring to light will probably shock you even more. This is because it is located in your refrigerator, and it might be providing a quiet diet for your prostate every single day. Habit 9 is: Consuming an excessive amount of dairy products is the 9th dairy-related habit. I am aware that this may come as a surprise because, for many guys, milk, cheese, and cream have been a part of their diet since they were children. Cheese on sandwiches, a glass of milk for breakfast, ice cream after supper. There is a sense of comfort, familiarity, and even wholesomeness associated with certain foods. However, excessive dairy consumption is far from harmless when it comes to prostate health. There is research that has demonstrated a correlation between diets that are heavy in full-fat milk and fatty cheeses and elevated chances of developing prostate cancer and benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH. The gland can develop to a size that your body cannot accommodate if it is overstimulated by the naturally occurring saturated fats and hormones that are contained in dairy products. It might be slowly but surely putting your prostate in a difficult situation, despite the fact that it might appear to be a harmless form of self-gratification. I have a recollection of a conversation I had with a patient who informed me that he couldn't possibly envision a day going by without his beloved sharp cheddar. It was his go-to comfort food, his nighttime routine, his little source of happiness. His symptoms, which included a poor flow, frequent overnight urine, and soreness in the pelvis, were becoming increasingly severe. He was dubious that cheese may be a contributing factor to the issue when we talked about diet. He nevertheless decided to cut back, using almond milk as a substitute for heavy dairy in his breakfast and serving himself smaller servings of yogurt rather than large wedges of cheese. The discrepancy became immediately apparent after a few months had passed. His flow became better. The continuous sense of urgency started to become less pressing. He informed me, doctor, that I had never thought that something so basic could have such an impact. Moderation is a powerful tool that allows you to select foods that are healing rather than harmful. I suggest that you consider reducing the amount of dairy that you consume on a daily basis if you consume it on a regular basis. Although you do not need to give it up completely, you may safeguard your health in ways that you will notice every day by minimizing the stress on your prostate. While food choices such as dairy products can gradually and subtly work against you, the next habit we will examine is not related to what you consume. When pain attacks, it is related to what you decide to use to alleviate it. You might be taken aback to learn how frequently the bottle in your medication cabinet contributes to the issue. The 10th habit is to cultivate a sense of gratitude. The 10th habit mentioned is the excessive use of painkillers. The reason why so many guys over 60 lean on them is something I understand. Aches develop in the muscles, stiffness develops in the joints, and previous injuries become painful again. Getting through the day and pushing past the discomfort appears to be most easily accomplished by popping a few of medications. What is often ignored, however, is that these medicines can take a hidden toll on your body, especially your prostate, if they are used too frequently. Ibuprofen and acetaminophen are medications that are helpful in small dosages, but they can have an impact on kidney function, blood flow, and long-term inflammation of the urinary system. This irritation does not just remain confined to the bladder, it makes its way to the prostate, where it quietly contributes to the enlargement that makes life so unpleasant. There was a man who suffered from severe back pain as a result of years of manual labor who I previously treated. He would grab for the bottle of over-the-counter medications that he kept on his nightstand every day without giving it a second thought. Just so that he could get through the week, he confessed that he felt as though he was reliant on them. We examined his habits extensively as soon as his difficulties with urination began to get worse. He gradually reduced his use of medicines with stretches, light physical therapy, and the addition of natural anti-inflammatory foods like turmeric and leafy greens. Although the process of reducing his dependency on pharmaceuticals was not an easy one. In just a few months, his pain not only became more bearable, but his symptoms related to his prostate also diminished. "Doctor," he stated to me, "I never would have imagined that the pills that I trusted were making me feel worse." That realization caused him to become aware of the fact that every decision has an impact on the body as a whole. Therefore, if you find that you are reaching for painkillers on a regular basis, you should take a step back and think about the long-term cost. Utilize them whenever they are needed, but do not let them become a crutch. Investigate safer alternatives that provide assistance for healing, rather than silently contributing to your ongoing difficulties. If you believe that the only quiet culprit is medicines, then I have some news for you regarding the following behavior. It takes place in the bathroom, and the pressure it causes on your prostate can be even more detrimental than the pills in your cabinet. Habit 11 is the final habit that is addressed. Habit number 11 consists of constipation and a diet that is deficient in dietary fiber. This is one of those things that many guys neglect, despite the fact that it has a significant impact on the prostate. Constipation is a common occurrence when your diet is insufficient in fiber, because the slowdown of bowel movements is a consequence of a lack of fiber. Every time you exert yourself while you are in the bathroom, your pelvic floor builds up pressure, which puts direct pressure on your prostate. Over the course of months and years, that continuous tension results in inflammation and irritation of the gland, which contributes to the aggravation of urinary difficulties and gland enlargement. Something that gives the impression of being a straightforward problem with digestion is actually a concealed load that is having a significant negative impact on the health of your prostate. An elderly man once informed me that he believed that constipation was simply an inevitable aspect of becoming older. He made peace with the bloating, the discomfort, and the amount of effort that it took him every morning to deal with it all. However, his symptoms were worsening, and he was unable to determine the reason for this. We noticed something very surprising happen after we altered his diet to incorporate more fiber, serving him oats for breakfast, leafy greens with dinner, and a handful of berries for snacking. The straining that he had been experiencing ceased, his bowels began to move on a regular schedule, and his prostate problems were alleviated in ways that he had not previously believed possible. "Doctor," he replied after looking at me, "I didn't realize that my bathroom habits were punishing me twice." He experienced relief and a newfound sense of control over his body as a result of a simple alteration. Therefore, if you have been accustomed to live with constipation, do not disregard it. Make sure that you consume enough fiber and water and that you provide your body with the resources that it needs in order to work efficiently. Protecting your bowels is the same as protecting your prostate. Constipation applies a quiet pressure from within the body, but the next habit we will expose is even more hazardous since it poisons your prostate from the outside, seeping in with each puff, and the damage it causes lasts for a significantly longer period of time than you may believe. The 12th habit is as follows. The habit of smoking is the 12th smoking-related habit. I am acquainted with numerous individuals who tell me that they only smoke a few cigarettes each day, or that there is no use in stopping at this stage in the game after having the habit for decades. In their opinion, it serves as a source of comfort, a ritual, or a method to pass the time. However, what many fail to comprehend is that each puff quietly damages the very system that maintains their prostate and bladder healthy. Smoking impairs the body's ability to heal itself, restricts circulation, and causes damage to blood vessels. When there is a decrease in the amount of blood flow, the prostate gland becomes more susceptible to inflammation, enlargement, and potentially cancer. Something that feels like an innocent routine might diminish your vitality and cut your life short. I will never forget one man who was in his 70s and came to me stating that smoking was the last pleasure he had in life. He dismissed his persistent coughing and shortness of breath as typical symptoms of getting older. However, his prostate was enlarged, his urinary issues were becoming more severe, and his vitality was dwindling. He was taken aback when I described the direct correlation that exists between prostate health and smoking. He started to cut back little by little with assistance. First, he reduced his smoking habit by 1 cigarette every day. Then he did the same thing again, and he kept doing it until he gave up the habit entirely. He strolled into my office a few months later with a brighter countenance and informed me that he was sleeping better, breathing easier, and even feeling more confidence in his body. "I wish I had done this sooner, doctor," he replied. The fact that he changed his ways demonstrates that it is never too late to start making improvements. Therefore, if you are still a smoker, even a recreational one, let this moment serve as your wake-up call to quit. Each and every cigarette that you do not light will be appreciated by your prostate, your heart, and your bladder. Abandoning something is not the same thing as quitting. It is a matter of regaining control over your health and freedom. The last habit that we need to talk about is the most ignored of them all, as it includes intimacy. Meanwhile, smoking restricts your prostate from the outside. If you disregard it, your prostate can be quietly deprived of the alleviation that it sorely needs. Habit 12. The 13th habit is to disregard both sexual health and intimacy. This aspect of life is one that far too many men over the age of 60 have quietly resigned themselves to. They tell themselves that it is no longer important, that their age has taken away their desire, or that it is selfish to worry about pleasure in later years. However, what a lot of people fail to recognize is that intimacy, which includes regular ejaculation, is more than just a private activity. It is one of the natural methods by which the body maintains the prostate in a healthy and unobstructed state. Congestion occurs and the prostate starts to enlarge when fluid that is no longer fresh accumulates as a result of the gland being disregarded. A lack of intimacy can be the beginning of a medical problem that has the ability to have an impact on every aspect of your everyday life. I remember having a conversation with a patient about his sexual history. He hadn't been sexually active in about 10 years. Despite the fact that he believed he was not causing any damage, his prostate painted a different picture. He reported experiencing pressure, persistent desires, and sleepless nights due to his symptoms. He was taken aback when I delicately described the function that intimacy performs in the maintenance of prostate health. He gradually began to incorporate closeness back into his life with the assistance of his spouse. Within a matter of months, not only did his symptoms show signs of improvement, but his marriage became warmer, his attitude improved, and he shared with me that he felt as if he were years younger than he actually was. He came to the conclusion that sex was not the only component of closeness. It was about being connected, about being full of energy, and about providing his body with the relief that it required. Therefore, if you have withdrawn from intimacy without saying anything, I strongly encourage you to think again about your decision. It does not make a difference if it is done with a companion or independently. What's important is that you pay attention to the natural requirements of your body. Far from being something to feel ashamed of, intimacy is actually medicine. It helps to restore homeostasis, increases circulation, and supports the prostate in performing its functions as they should be performed. Now that we have revealed all 13 of these concealed behaviors, let's combine everything into a compelling conclusion. The truth regarding the health of your prostate has the potential to alter the way that you live the rest of your life. Conclusion, gentlemen, we have discussed 13 unattractive practices that subtly cause your prostate to move toward danger. A long sitting period, refraining from urinating at night, and relying on excessive amounts of red meat, alcohol, or dairy products are all examples of behaviors that contribute to the condition. Individually, any of these options may appear to be of little consequence, but collectively, they will determine the direction of your life. I have witnessed the toll it has taken on my patients by looking into their eyes, sleepless nights, toilet visits that appear to be never-ending, and the aggravation of having the impression that your body is no longer something that you control are all part of the experience. However, I have also witnessed the optimism. I have witnessed elderly men, some in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s, make positive changes in their lives after realizing that these habits were not immutable fate, but rather choices. In the comments box below, let us know what you learned today and what change you intend to make. We all develop when we share. Let's assist each other. If you found this video to be even the slightest bit insightful or beneficial in any way, please remember to click the like button. Make sure that you do not miss out on any information that may have an impact on your health by clicking on the subscribe button. Before you go, make sure the bell is switched on. Input the number 1 if you found this video to be of assistance. If not, enter the number 0. It may not be apparent to you how significant your comment is. There is one patient who comes to mind very regularly. When he first came to me, he was completely exhausted and thought that the finest years of his life were behind him. We collaborated to figure out how to alter his routine. A greater readiness to listen to his body, increased time spent walking, decreased alcohol consumption, and an increase in closeness are all recommended. After a period of time, his prostate returned to a normal level, his vitality increased, and his nights became tranquil once again. "Doctor, I feel like myself again," he informed me while his eyes welled up with tears. I share these lessons with you now because of that particular moment. A gland is not the only component of your prostate health. It is a matter of your autonomy, your self-respect, and your delight in experiencing life on a daily basis. I therefore suggest that you take an honest look at these 13 behaviors. Do you notice any of those qualities in yourself? Which ones are taking away your sense of tranquility without you even being aware of it? Keep in mind that you are not need to make all of the changes all at once. Begin with one behavior today, then add another one the following day. Every little step brings us one step closer to liberty. Every man is entitled to grow old with dignity and self-assurance rather than with dread and shame. If you walk away from me with only one thing to think about, let that thing be this. The choices that you make in the now, rather than your age, will determine what happens in the future. You currently have the ability to safeguard your prostate as well as your life.